If your child is dealing with eczema, food reactions, allergies, or an immune system that always seems to be on edge, I want to invite you to my free live masterclass, The Natural Solution for Kids with Eczema and Allergies. I'm going to be walking you through why so many kids are becoming reactive, what's actually driving the flare-ups, and what genuinely helps calm the system from within, not just manage the symptoms on the surface. This is the approach that most families never hear about from their GP or specialist, and it's what I've been using in clinical practice for over 20 years. The first session is on Tuesday, the 26th of May at 8 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. I have a couple of other sessions that same week for different time zones and schedules, and it's completely free to join. To grab your spot, head to naturalsuperkids.com/masterclass. Or if you're on Instagram, send me a DM with the word reactive and I'll send you the link directly. I'd love to see you there. Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello. Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast. Jessica Donovan here. I am cozied up. It feels like winter has really hit here in South Australia, even though it's not even officially winter yet, but we've had some cold, wet, windy weather. And although I am more of a sunshine girl, I do like the seasons. I get well and truly over winter by the end of it, or maybe even a couple of months in. But I do enjoy my warm cups of herbal tea, sitting here in my trackies, and, cooking soup and putting the slow cooker on and all of those good things. So anyway, no matter where you are in the world, maybe it's cool and wintry where you are, or maybe you're in a sunny climate, it really doesn't matter. But today we are talking about eczema and allergies, and specifically about the 3 things we do differently here at Natural Super Kids when it comes to our approach to eczema and allergies that may be different, or you may not have heard from your medical specialist or other practitioners that you have potentially worked with, or information you've come across online. So we often see and hear from parents that have tried everything, and you might fit into that category. If you're listening to this, you might have tried the eliminations. You might have tried removing dairy and gluten and eggs. You might have bought all the creams. You probably have a cupboard full of eczema creams if your child has eczema, different probiotics, air purifiers if your child has those environmental allergies. You've probably tried a whole range of supplements and medications. But if you're listening to this, I'm guessing that you still haven't, got the results that you want for your child's eczema or allergies. They're still congested. They're still reacting to foods or other things that might be unclear. They're rubbing their nose, their mouth breathing, they're itching their skin. Their sleep is affected by all of this. And you've probably been to, multiple appointments and sought out support and help from different medical professionals and maybe even alternative health practitioners. So this episode is for you. I'm going to talk about why so many kids get stuck or stay stuck when it comes to eczema and allergies, what we do differently here at Natural Super Kids, which will give you some hope in terms of a different approach and different things that you might be able to try. So where people get stuck, and a lot of kids get stuck, is because, really when it boils down to it, a lot of approaches focus on isolated symptoms rather than the bigger immune picture. What happens so often in our medical model in the Western world is health is compartmentalized. You go to one specialist for your child's skin and then another specialist for their allergies. And things aren't sort of looked at as a whole. The skin gets treated separately from the gut. Food reactions get treated separately from how the immune system is functioning. Allergies get treated separately from eczema. Recurring infections, which are so common in eczema and allergy kids, get treated separately again. And we're often given two sort of options on different ends of the spectrum. We are given an option of sort of treating symptoms or suppressing symptoms with things like steroid creams, antihistamines, or we get a highly restrictive wellness approach that's stressful and unsustainable, elimination diets, and, piles of supplements. And these two extremes can be really hard to manage, really hard to figure out. And, essentially we are left in a situation where we can either just keep managing symptoms or go on some sort of protocol that feels really hard to manage and almost impossible to implement. And that can be for a variety of reasons, because we're busy, because our kids are fussy. I often talk about the fact that as parents of eczema and allergy kids, we can only do so much. Our kids have to meet us. They're the ones that have to take the supplements and eat the foods. And that doesn't always happen smoothly or even at all. So we're left kind of in a bit of a stressful position as parents. Now, I do want to say before we get into some of the differences in our approach, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, that I and us as a team here at Natural Super Kids are definitely not anti-medication. Steroid creams, antihistamines, steroid medication absolutely have their place and can be incredibly helpful. But what many families notice is that they are, not a cure, if you like, for or even a long-term solution for our kids' eczema and allergies. Symptoms keep returning, new symptoms appear, and often children can become increasingly overreactive or increasingly reactive over time. And so zooming out and looking at the bigger picture is what we are all about here at Natural Super Kids. Yes, medications can be helpful to manage symptoms in the short term or when things are really flared up and our children are really struggling. But we also want to dig deeper and address some of the underlying drivers of eczema and allergies. So the first thing we do differently here at Natural Super Kids is we look beyond standard allergy testing. Again, allergy testing can be helpful, but many children with eczema and allergies react in ways that won't show up on standard allergy testing, or some things might show up, but it's not the full picture. And this can make parents, sort of doubt whether their child has any, allergy symptoms at all, or not symptoms, but whether allergies are driving their symptoms at all. But as we've talked about in our last couple of episodes, just because nothing comes up on allergy testing, it doesn't mean that your child isn't reacting to foods or environmental substances or even, different environmental triggers like stress or heat. We talked about that in the episode we did a couple of weeks ago, all around histamine and mast cell dysregulation. So we go beyond allergy testing. It doesn't mean we never recommend allergy testing. Allergy testing can be helpful, but it doesn't always give us the full picture. We need to really look at, and this is what we do here at Natural Super Kids, we look at that broader immune picture. We look at the inflammatory load, the histamine load, environmental triggers, gut-related immune activation, and different patterns in symptoms, behaviors, and reactions that can give us clues and point us in the direction in terms of what might be going on for a particular child. We also help families understand the difference between true allergies, those IgE allergies, to get technical. They're the ones that come up and will show up on allergy testing, whether that's blood testing or skin prick testing. But there are also things like intolerances and sensitivities and histamine-related reactions and immune dysregulation that might not show up on allergy testing. And all of these different things require different approaches. So an individualized approach for each child is really helpful. And yes, there are definitely some, common things that can really help eczema and allergy kids, like overall reduction of inflammation, whether that be through diet and lifestyle sort of strategies. But there are, all sorts of individualized things that need to be looked at in each child. And that is something that we, really focus on here at Natural Super Kids. So we look beyond typical or standard allergy testing. Just because something is not showing up in an allergy test doesn't mean your child doesn't have some allergy processes going on underneath, because there can be all sorts of different allergy pictures, as I just sort of talked about. The second thing we do really differently here at Natural Super Kids, particularly differently from a more medical approach, is that we look at the gut immune skin connection. This is so important, and I talk a lot about the gut being the foundation of our health, and it certainly is the foundation of how our immune system functions and also how the health of our skin is as well. So many children with eczema and allergies also have gut issues, gut symptoms, constipation, bloating, reflux, fussy eating, which is very closely linked with gut health as well. A lot of eczema allergy kids have been on recurrent antibiotics or antibiotics early in their life. They might have tummy aches or inconsistent bowel movements or altered bowel habits. These are very much important pieces of the puzzle when it comes to our children's allergies and their eczema as well. They're not separate issues. We need to be looking at how the gut is functioning when it comes to kids with eczema and allergies, because a lot of inflammation that is causing or exacerbating eczema and allergies is actually coming from the gut. And we find if we can get on top of or get some resolution with some of these gut and digestive symptoms and conditions, we can start to see improvements in how our eczema and allergy kids are in terms of those particular symptoms. And the other important thing to say here is if there are imbalances within the gut, it doesn't always show up as real clear symptoms related to the gut. So a child with an imbalance in their gut doesn't always have digestive symptoms like constipation, reflux, bloating. So it's not a guarantee that if our child doesn't have a digestive symptoms, that their gut is perfectly healthy. But the gut plays a huge role when it comes to the way our immune system responds, our immune regulation, our inflammatory responses, the way our bodies and our kids' bodies process histamine, our skin health, and our children's and adults, but children we're talking about more specifically, their tolerance to foods and environmental triggers. So the gut has a very important part to play when it comes to our kids' allergies and their eczema. And we are looking at things like microbiome diversity, gut barrier integrity, how the immune system was educated early on in life in terms of how that child was brought into this world, what the birth mode was, what pregnancy was like for mum, what sort of exposure to different infections or medications they might have had in early life. These things all matter. The impact of repeated antibiotics or ultra-processed diets, and, gut healing or leaky gut are terms that are really used a lot. They're trendy. They are probably overused, but they are really common in kids with eczema and allergies and needed to be treated individually. So that is the second thing that we do differently. We look at that gut, immune, skin connection. And again, we want to be looking at each child individually in terms of what one child might need to support their gut health and their digestive health is different from another child with the same symptoms. But there are also some common things that can really be supportive here as well. And the third thing we do differently is we look at the child as a whole. We're not just looking at the symptoms or the diagnosis. As we talked about in last week's episode, 2 children or 3 children or 4 children can all have eczema, but they can have eczema for completely different reasons. The driving or underlying factors underneath that eczema can be very different for 4 different children that all present with eczema. And it's the same with allergy pictures as well. So one child might have strong environmental allergy drivers. Another may have significant gut dysfunction. Another might have histamine overload and chronic immune activation after repeated infections. And another may have major nervous system stress and poor sleep that worsens inflammation. So we need to be looking at those driving factors for each individual child. And this is where a generic approach to eczema or to allergies often fails, or at least doesn't, give long-term relief or, long-term relief to a particular child. So we focus on understanding what is driving immune reactivity for this particular child. What is keeping the body stuck or preventing it from sort of moving forward with progress and improvements in symptoms, and what realistic, sustainable support actually looks like for a particular family. All families are different. Some families might have, much busier lifestyles than others. Other, families might live on farms or in the city. So we are looking at not just each child individually, but also each family individually, and what a particular family can implement that is realistic and sustainable. So there's a few things that we don't do. We don't put every child on, restrictive diets. We definitely don't promise a quick fix or remove foods unnecessarily. I've talked about this before, that when we are, let's just remove all of these foods and put this child on a very, minimal diet or allergy-friendly diet, by doing that, we're actually doing the gut microbiome a disservice, because the gut microbiome thrives with variety in the diet. So we don't want to be removing foods unnecessarily or putting children on unnecessary restrictive or elimination diets. Yes, sometimes, and actually a lot of the time, it can be helpful to remove certain foods from the diet for the short term, but we always aim to get those foods back into the diet as quickly as possible, unless there is, a proper IgE allergy, of course. Then we do not want to be be introducing those foods back into the diet. And I also want parents to know that you can get progress with eczema and allergies without being perfect. There are lots of things that you can do that are fairly easy to implement that can have a big impact in terms of improving eczema and allergy symptoms. Parents are busy. We don't need to be full-time health detectives to help our children, and that's what we are here to support you with. So remember, eczema and allergies are rarely isolated issues. Eczema isn't isolated to the skin. If your child has allergies that are causing congestion, it's not isolated just to their upper respiratory system. It is bigger than that. We really need to, and where we get really good results is we're zooming out and we are looking at immune regulation and we're looking at gut health. They're the two sort of areas that we are really focusing on and improving to get those improvements to the skin, to the congestion, and to the immune system as a whole. And the great thing about focusing on the gut and the immune system is we can see improvements in, skin flare-ups, in skin healing, in congestion and sneezing and itchy eyes and all of those sorts of things all at once. But then we can also see further reaching improvements in the immune system and how often a child is getting sick, their sleep, their behavior, their mood, and obviously their digestive comfort as well. And that just is really nice to get those overall improvements in a child's, health overall, and all of these different symptoms or systems improving by working on the gut and the immune system. So if your child's eczema or allergies keep returning, I want you to know it's not because you haven't tried hard enough or you need to try that next food elimination or that next perfect cream or that next supplement that has worked so well for your neighbor's friend. What you do need to do is focus on that bigger picture, which is what we support you to do here at Natural Super Kids through education, awareness, and the support of practitioners that have a lot of knowledge and experience in these areas. Now, if you're listening to this episode in real time as it is coming out in May 2026, you may be lucky enough to be catching this when we are opening our eczema and allergy program. You will hear more about that at the start and end of this episode if it is currently open and we are welcoming new members. And if not, you will find a link to our eczema and allergy recipe ebook that is a really great place to start. I hope this episode has helped you see things in a bit of a different light or in a bit of a different way than you may have heard eczema and allergies being talked about before. And if you want to know more about how we can support your child with eczema and allergies, definitely check out our 12 weeks eczema and allergy program, where we help parents to understand what's driving your child's immune reactivity, the things that you can do that will actually move the needle and make a difference to your child's symptoms without overwhelming you with information you don't need to know or changes that you don't need to implement. We're all about those practical, sustainable steps forward to improve your child's immune regulation, their gut health, so you can have those broad improvements when it comes to not just your child's eczema and allergies, but their overall health and well-being as well. And if you are listening to this outside of a time where our eczema and allergy program is open, we can definitely still support you in our online clinic, and you can reach out to us at support@naturalsuperkids.com. I nearly just gave you our website, or you can go to naturalsuperkids.com and fill out the form to connect with us. You can also connect with us over on Instagram at Natural Super Kids, and we will let you know what we can do to support you. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope this episode has been helpful. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.